Hello and welcome, everyone. We're just waiting a couple minutes for folks to gather and get started here. My name is Julie Anderson. I'll do a proper intro in a little bit for folks once they join, but we'll just give them 1 or 2 minutes to fully convene. Chris, in your absence, we were just completing the conversation around, especially since you're in the music business.
Right.
What are the different modalities that you've listened to music on, and like which are the ones that are kind of coming back in fashion?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
did you ever have one of those like gigantic boom boxes that you'd like put on your porch outside and,
you
rock
know,
out to?
because this call is being showcased live nationally, to talk about my familiarity with boom boxes and the like would really date me. And I'm eager to talk about all those things, but then I think my age is going to be quickly known. But yeah, I do remember the boom boxes, and I love my boom box. I love my cassette player.
I had a
I love
boombox slash cassette player as well, that there was
really,
like, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there was some Cher, I think. I'm not sure why I was into Cher at that point, but I was.
Yeah,
So
and she's still extremely relevant,
I know.
timeless. And but no, one of the best gifts that I ever got was a Walkman.
Yes.
Yeah, and the good old days.
There you go.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long ago, but apparently it has. But I think now there is a craving for some of that old stuff. 'Cause it was just reliable,
I think that's right.
right?
Well, speaking of reliable, I will try to get us started on time here. I think we've got quorum on the call. We may have a few others join us here. But I'll kick things off and say hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today to talk about a topic that I know is top of mind for us here at Maven, and many of you as well, which is fertility benefits and their administration. We are really excited to share how HR and benefits leaders like you all can meaningfully support your employees as they navigate one of the most difficult and important stages of their lives. My name is Julie Anderson. I'm the Senior Director of Clinical Outcomes here at Maven. My background is in analytics primarily, but through a wandering path, I found myself here at Maven, and I lead our clinical outcomes team, which really talks about and evaluates all the ways that Maven can make a difference for employers like you all, both in terms of medical costs, and as well in terms of things like productivity, retention, talent attraction, and all the things that really matter to employers at the end of the day in terms of supporting their workforce. I'm also thrilled to be joined today by Chris Smith, Vice President of Benefits at Universal Music Group. So Chris, I'll hand you the mic. Would love to just get a brief introduction, your perspective as a longtime benefits leader, and any personal experience you want to highlight.
Well, Julie, I am thrilled, as you know, to be a part of this conversation, to be a part of this forum. I think I come to this conversation both as, yes, a benefits leader and having been in the benefits space now for over 20 years. Man, I just felt that when I said it. It just kind of hangs there for a second. And it's a career that I'm very fortunate to be in. It's certainly a career that found me, and I'm so happy that it did. So yes, I come into this as a benefits leader, but I also come into this conversation as a father. I'm the father, as everyone in this building knows, because I talk about it all the time. I'm a father of two beautiful twin girls, and they are 4 years old. And I can tell you about 4 or 5 years ago, I too, and my wife of that time, we walked through that same journey, that arduous, sometimes very overwhelming journey of needing fertility support and care. And at that time, not having I was not working here. It's just, we didn't have the access to care and the guidance and the support. So this is very personal for me, along with the stories of many employees who come to talk to me about their journeys voluntarily and exploring ways that we can help them. So again, really excited to partner and
Yeah, thanks so
hopeful
much for
for a good
sharing that.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I know there are probably a lot of folks on this call who have personal experience or experience from friends or family of how difficult this journey can be. I also join you in having some personal experience. I have two little boys, both are IVF babies, and I felt, at the same time so blessed, and it was still a very difficult journey to be able to have the support to do that and build my family in this way. So
Yeah.
we know firsthand what this means, both for employers and organizations like yours, but then also as people and employees. So maybe I can move us along here and just give a quick introduction of what Maven is for those who are less familiar. Maven is the world's largest virtual clinic for women and families who are on a mission to make healthcare work for all of us. So we provide clinical, emotional, and financial support in one place through our always on platform that's available 24/7, 365 across the globe. For compassionate care, some of the most joyful but also vulnerable life stages, including newborn matrix, so have support for menopause and ongoing care, midlife care as well. We partner with employers to fill the gaps left by the traditional healthcare system, and we try to ensure that employees feel supported and employers see stronger outcomes and lower costs for their members along those journeys, which is both good for employees in general and also is really beneficial for the bottom line, especially if employers who are sort of footing the bill of their own medical costs and are taking on that sort of risk. So just to start it off and keep things a little bit interactive, I'd love to do a quick poll with all of you. So hopefully it's popping up for everyone here, but give us a response and then we'll just wait 20 seconds or so for some answers to come in. All right, and let's go ahead and close the poll. All right, so interesting. Okay, so looks like around half of you or so, there are a good amount of you that are not providing any fertility benefits at all right now. We work with a lot of employers for whom that's the case, and they're really just trying to understand how to first support their employees through this journey. Looks like a little bit of a smaller number are providing some basic coverage, so referrals, a little bit of limited coverage. Smallest bucket here in terms of fertility benefits with a little bit of care management. And then probably middling amount or so of those of you who have that comprehensive care in place already and are maybe just looking to see what you can do to help better administer that plan or ways that you can better support employees from a clinical perspective as they go through that journey. So thanks so much for doing that. Always really interesting to see where folks are at coming into this call. All right. So I'll apply Chris for a little bit of information here as we get further into it. So Chris, you've been working in the benefits space for your entire career. I won't say how many years, but we've already talked about tape cassettes, so I feel like that sets the stage for folks. You are in a virtual room full of benefit leaders here. What brought you to the field? What made you love the space?
And the fact that I have this relic on from the 1990s certainly doesn't help justify my youthfulness, but it's reliable and it's working. So hopefully the audience won't mind this very big headset that I have around my face. One of the things that I have found very fascinating about this world of benefits and well-being is that it's forever changing. It is a very dynamic space. It's very nuanced. I can tell you the things that were considered hot benefits back in the day, 20 years ago, aren't necessarily on that list of hot things of today in terms of benefits and well-being offerings. It gives us a real opportunity as a business to focus on the needs, the changing needs and the changing demographics of our employees and their families. There were conversations 20 years ago, unfortunately, that were considered taboo topics that now we are talking about more openly. I love that we are talking more openly about needing fertility support. We are trying to get pregnant and we need support. These are issues that were happening 20 years ago and beyond. And now I think we are positioned more than ever to have honest conversations about them. And so benefits is a powerful tool to help meet these very powerful and necessary and nuanced conversations. The goal, it's always said, benefits, right? It's one of our greatest and biggest retention tools. It's one of our biggest and best recruitment tools. And so if you want people in and you want people to stay, you want to give them the tools and the resources they need to be present so that they can do their best work. And I know that I'm saying things that all of the leaders and folks on this call already know, but that is something that I constantly have to remind myself of to keep my barometer in check and making sure that we are meeting the needs of our employees and their families in no small measure. So
Yeah,
that's what's kept me here.
no, and I think that's really important, and I know a lot of folks have to consider things like that.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like fertility benefits in particular are a really important part of your benefit strategy, and how does that factor in with what you think of as like the demographic makeup of UNG in particular?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, even if we look at it from a claims perspective, right? Again, I think I'm saying all the things that most folks on this call already know or certainly have experience. Every year, at least once a year, we're having to do what I like to call a kind of an autopsy of our claims experience, aggregate anonymized data. And every year, you certainly will see most times, if not all the time, a high cost claim that is in result of a NICU situation, a high cost birth, all those types of things. And so there is a cost component to this, right, as well. Like, geez, is there something that we can do to better manage or push or strive for better outcomes? How can we support that? Now, we can't guarantee outcomes. That's not something that's within our purview. But are there things that we are not doing that could help to, if they were present, if those resources were available, could it have made a difference? And most studies show that it actually could. One of the things that I like about my job, and I love about the people here, especially at this company, is that they are very vocal. They are very expressive and have little issue with letting me know what the need is, what the struggle is, how can we better support. And the conversation around building a family and the struggles of being able to do that. And where do I go? How do I navigate all of these wonderful benefit offerings that we've had available for so long? Who do I go to for what? The space is very crowded. I go here for one thing and then I have to go here for something else, and it's not cohesive, right? How can we make this a more cohesive experience? So as you know, Julie, we talked about this. I tried to come up with a very cool acronym for the benefits philosophy that we are wanting to build and serve as our pillar in delivering meaningful benefits and programs to our employees. And there were three pillars that were necessary for us to I think, achieve that end. The first is access, right? We want to make sure that whatever it is that our folks need is accessible. The second thing is equity, right? We understand that sometimes the type of care that you have access to, unfortunately, may be driven by socioeconomic factors, what your zip code is and what your address is and those types of things. So how do we get in front of that? And the third, and certainly not the least, is ease. How do we make this experience easy? Easy for you to know about, easy for you to access, easy for you to get the things that you need. And Julie, that gave me AEE, So what was that, A? So I didn't really get a cool acronym from that, but it certainly has again been the barometer check for me. And how good are we delivering on this campaign of offering meaningful support to our employees based on feedback, based on those anecdotal conversations, and based on the data that is helping to drive the decisions of what supports we need to put in place. Man, that was a long answer. I'm so sorry.
No, no, and thank you for that. I think that's exactly what folks are looking for. A little bit of sort of guidance and maybe validation of some of the things that they're going through as well. And I think there are a couple of really important themes in what you said. And one is, I think fertility in general benefits are really at this intersection of two different problems that employers are generally solving. And one is that they want to attract and retain the best employees. They want to be able to offer something that's really meaningful that will get folks to come and then get them to stay. But at the same time, they know that by offering that benefit, they are sometimes opening themselves up to more risky births, right? Any birth that is conceived through fertility treatment is inherently more risky in terms of NICU and C-section and those more downstream expensive fertility maternity outcomes than a birth that's conceived without that treatment. And so I think it's a good time for me to take a couple minutes to frame up the difference that we think about at Maven between unmanaged and clinically managed care. Because if you're taking the time to, and the money, frankly, to invest in these sorts of programs, it's one thing to give your teenager a credit card and say, go wild, buy what you need. And it's another to give them guidance around what's a good purchase and what's not. And, really give them quality advice on what they should be doing to protect themselves and to protect you. So this is sort of how we feel like it's best expressed. And it may be a new term for many of you in reference to the fertility benefit space. But I think it's always helpful to put this into perspective with a member story. So we pulled one for you, tweaked a few of the details, but imagine Maya. She's a 34-year-old employee. She and her partner have been trying to conceive for more than a year. Under a typical unmanaged benefit, Maya is referred directly to a fertility clinic. She has that benefit. And the fertility clinic is really incentivized to say, great, you've got rich benefits. We're going to get you right into treatment and we're going to get you to a baby really quickly. But after 2 failed cycles for Maya, each of which, by the way, are over 25K or so, Maya's feeling discouraged, exhausted, and unsure of what to do next. And what no one caught is that Maya has a thyroid imbalance, something that is treatable with $25 a month medication that might have even made IVF unnecessary. And by not treating that, her cycles, her very expensive cycles, have not worked and have led her to a really dark place mentally and physically. So an unmanaged fertility benefit, which is really the most common in the industry today, often act like that middleman. They connect employees to a fertility clinic, and then they get out. They remove themselves from the process, and they're leaving employees like Maya to navigate a confusing, complex, and emotionally challenging process totally alone and without guidance. So without oversight, those sorts of expensive and invasive treatments like IVF often become the default path instead of the path of last resort, or those that are really tailored to an individual based on their medical needs. And the result of that is higher costs, unnecessary treatments, poorer outcomes, and a really long and tough path physically and mentally for employees as they try to navigate this journey. And that's where a clinically managed care benefit changes the story. And we've got, as part of that, proactive support from OBGYNs, reproductive endocrinologists, and fertility educators, along with a whole host of other types of procedures or providers that folks have access to. And through that, we have care coaching programs where we do a thorough assessment of folks and their medical conditions and their goals when they come into the program. And that's where something like Maya's thyroid condition could have been identified and treated before she ever pursued IVF. And she would have gotten pregnant a lot more quickly and with a lot less cost as well. So that proactive oversight not only saves her employer tens of thousands of dollars, but also leads to better outcomes and a more supportive experience. So this sort of model is where experts are actively involved throughout the employee's family building journey. As I said, we call it care coaching, and instead of simply coordinating appointments, the benefit really provides things like early engagement, before folks are actually in treatment. We try to get them in as early as possible to be able to inform their journey and steer them along the way. We look at continuous oversight with care advocates. Everyone gets a dedicated care advocate along the way who's their person for navigation and all their questions and connecting them to clinical care along the way. They have clinicians tracking their process or their progress, adjusting their care plans, flagging risks that are arising in real time. And all this is based on evidence-based guidance with protocols that are designed to prevent unnecessary treatment, reduce complications and poor outcomes, and prioritize the safest and quickest path to a healthy pregnancy. So it's not just about handing employees a referral to a clinic and connecting them with that care right away. It's about surrounding them with a care team that actively manages risk, prevents overtreatment, and supports those outcomes from day one. My team has done some financial exercises as well, working with some of our partners where we get claims data. And we've actually seen really meaningful, real savings, especially as you look at the full journey from fertility care through maternity care. And the numbers we've come up with after lots of claims-based studies that we've done, we've seen over $8,000, around $8,200 per birth when you think about the savings that you can achieve with this sort of clinically managed care, both in fertility costs themselves, treatment costs, but also in those downstream outcomes that manifest during the maternity journey itself. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what Maven is and how we think about that clinical journey. But I'd love to turn back to Chris here and hear a little bit of your perspective with UMG. You all have been a Maven client since 2019, and you recently made the decision to expand your fertility support to that clinically managed care with our Maven Managed benefit. That's our fertility benefits administration product. So I'm curious what made you recognize the need to offer that more clinically managed support to UMG employees? What were you hearing from employees or sort of seeing in your financials that was leading you down that path?
Well, for one, to build upon that benefits philosophy of making things accessible, equitable, and easy, I thought that we could strike all of those things by aligning to a single partner, right? Creating that center of excellence, that one-stop shop for employees and families to help them to navigate an already overwhelming journey. You have a solution in X, and that X for us was unequivocally Maven, and here's why. And I have to say, I am not a paid spokesman for Maven. This is a real life and true testament, I think, to the wonderful partnership that we have had with Maven that has come through the testimonies unsolicited of many employees. And for one, I can share a story with you from one person who was just celebrating and lauding. And this particular person can be a pretty tough critic. And for them to be very effusive in the support that she received for her 2-month-old and having to find resources for breastfeeding and not knowing where to go and leveraging Maven for that, she was extremely appreciative of the support and the program. One of the things that I wanted to say in terms of, I think sometimes there is a misconception about managed care. And managed care often has this connotation of there is such rigor and there are all of these guardrails because I am being managed through a process. That's not necessarily true in this space. And Julie, I want to emphasize it's more of what you said around having that army of care and support with you, behind you, in front of you. I can tell you that it certainly was not enough for me and my family just to have a doctor. There were conversations that needed to be had after we left the doctor's office. There were things that I wish we had known before we started the process. There was the emotional toll of rounds of IUI not working, and where do we go from here? IVF being a struggle, and how do we pay for it? How do we come? That was a struggle. And then also being told um, when the embryo was thankfully formed, hey, we see that you have twins, but we don't see a membrane, and there's a 95% chance that they won't make it. Really difficult things to hear. And where do we go with this? And we were just using a series of Google and calling friends and getting guidance and support. It's my way of saying, I told you I would bring in this personal component to this because a lot of this is personal to me. But how I wish that there was a team of care, that army of support that could help to point us in different directions and have those meaningful conversations so we're not just spinning our wheels trying to do this on our own. How I wish that was in place for us, because I am sure that that would have reduced the amount of visits that we would have had to various doctors and all the money that we paid, all the money that our insurance or my plan sponsor had to pay. So managed care isn't so much restrictive as it is supportive. I think that's one of the key drivers in striking that access to accessibility, equity, and ease through benefits. And the long-standing partnership that we had with Maven is a testament to that. How do we build upon this? How do we build upon folks being used to going to Maven for all things family related and having to find resources easy? So it made sense, and we wanted to build upon what I think is already a good relationship with Maven.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important, Chris. And I've worked in a lot of different areas of healthcare in my career, and I think fertility is a really unique space where this idea of, it is win-win-win when we can get this right, right? Like
Right.
getting someone to a course of IVF that they don't potentially need is bad for the employer. It's bad for the patient. It's bad for outcomes. It's bad all around for basically everything except for the fertility clinic, who's getting that business. And so there really is this opportunity that I think is unique in healthcare to align those incentives, and really, make something that is true support for the employee, but that is also going to reduce costs for the
Absolutely.
employer. Which I think is a good segue maybe into our next slide here. I want to talk a little bit about cost. See if we can get there. Thank you. And I won't spend too much time here, but I know we've talked about what clinically managed care is, and I do want to highlight what that means on the cost side, because when we speak with employers, the number one question about fertility dollars is, where are these really going, and why do these programs feel so unpredictable from year to year in terms of what you're actually going to be spending? It can be scary to implement some of these benefits without knowing what it's going to do to your bottom line and what sort of variation you're going to see from year to year. And I think some of the drivers of cost in general and some of the sources of that variation come from a couple different sources that we've really looked at through data and analytics. And the first one is an over-reliance on IVF. We've talked a little bit about this, but without clinical oversight, that tends to be the first treatment that is accessed, even sometimes when it's not necessary. If folks find out that someone has a relatively rich benefit level, they're not paying out of pocket, and so they go right to that sort of most invasive treatment. And at over $23,000 a cycle, 25 sometimes, you can see that adds up really, really quickly. I think another is medical inflation, especially for pharmacy costs. So fertility drug costs have increased 84% over the past decade. And employers don't really realize sometimes how much of their claim spend comes from rising pharmacy costs tied to unmanaged cycles. And that's really something that we focus on in terms of our contracting and our benefit design, is trying to manage that piece specifically. I think another is delayed intervention or diagnosis of specific conditions. This is where our care coaching programs really come in. But when members don't get support until, they've been trying for a year or 2 years or more, and they don't know that maybe an easily addressable issue like PCOS or the fact that they're not ovulating or a mild male factor issue, they go unaddressed. And those can be remedied with some really simple solutions like lifestyle changes or low-cost medications. And folks just kind of get pushed into IVF without knowing that they have other less invasive options. I think high-risk pregnancies, everyone on this call probably can mirror Chris's story about that high-cost NICU baby that results from fertility treatments. Things like multiple embryo transfers and unmanaged IVF or ART, they can increase the likelihood of multiples, NICU admissions, C-section deliveries, all of which really drive up the costs on the maternity side. And when those fertility claims themselves spike, it's rarely because employees suddenly need more care or more of them are accessing care. It's usually because there's something structural in the system or because traditional benefit design unintentionally pushes them towards the most expensive options. So that's why we think of clinically managed programs really mattering, both for the support that the employee is feeling and the journey that they ultimately go on, but also because of costs and the real opportunities that are there to catch risks early, guide employees to the right treatment for them, and cut costs before they're actually incurred. And I think, every benefits leader has to make the case internally when they are introducing a new approach like this. So Chris, maybe I'll kick it over to you again and would love to hear about, when you were first thinking about implementing this sort of approach, how did you think about going about it and sort of selling it internally to your leadership or finance team to sort of make the case for it internally?
Yeah, it's always nice to talk about sort of the altruism of all of these wonderful benefits, but you do have to also address cost. How is this going to impact bottom line and all of these things? And while am a huge believer in not only looking at the ROI, but also the return on value, and I think that's very huge. There was certainly an argument to be made looking at the vastness and the depth of our claims experience and looking at the impact, as you said, of those high cost claims as it relates to births and NICU situations and the like, seeing this trend over and over again and the feedback from our employees, which is very important to us, and looking at what the competition is doing and wanting to be competitive, all of these things combined. We had to take a special look at ways that we could help to better structure our program. We want to make sure that we don't just have dollars that are just sitting out there. We want to make sure that we have guidance, solutions, structure, navigation tools and supports and the like to better help to guide how these dollars are being spent in ways that are meaningful, not only to the business, but that are meaningful to the employees. Because if there is meaningful spend that is leading to meaningful outcomes, I think you ultimately and innately or inevitably will see cost savings because you're dealing with less waste. You're dealing with maybe less redundancy or overlap. Do you need to see 15 physicians for this one thing? Do you really need to do this other thing? Did I really need to go when we were going through this journey? Did I really need to see as many specialists as we ended up seeing? Maybe had I had that first conversation with that care advocate to help guide us in the right direction, maybe it would have saved us not only a whole lot in time, but a whole lot of money as well. And so this is the conversation that I literally open with and saying, we need to structure this better. The other thing is we have we had a sort of a cash benefit, and we said, hey, you know what, everybody, you get $30,000, you get $30,000, and you get $30,000 for addressing all of your fertility needs. Here's your $30,000 that's embedded in the medical plan. Have at it. That's the message that you're sending out is have at it. It's well-spirited, clearly. It's $30,000. I wish I had that when we started. It's very meaningful. It's very impactful. Where do I go with this? And having the guidance and the tools and the support to better help you to guide you on how to spend that cash and to spend it in a way that it gets you to the outcomes that you desire, I think are really important. So we move from the cash benefit to a cycle-based benefit. We're going to be moving to that beginning in January, Julie, as you know. And that helps, I think, to also address that pillar around equity, right? Because depending on where I'm located, maybe I live in a region where, $30,000 can get me a lot in terms of services and doctor's visits and transfers and service, et cetera. But then what if I live in a region where $30,000 only gets me half as much? And so now I'm toward the end of my $30,000. I'm running out of cash, and now I'm just going to throw everything at this. My doctor is going to throw any and everything at this so that we can hopefully get pregnant. And what we've seen historically, and even in claims data, what that has done, sometimes that has led to some complications. Sometimes that has led to more NICU situations. Sometimes that has led to multiple births because we are now just throwing any and everything in almost like a desperate attempt. So as so much as opposed to worrying about how much we are, looking at the dollars from an employee perspective, let's focus on the cycle. Let's focus on getting you what you need from start to finish. And we're hoping this more holistic approach even does more with the investment, not only to justify the investment in Maven, but I think inevitably will show a significant, hopeful, some cost savings in how we've been managing our fertility benefits.
Yeah, 100%. And do you see that sort of clinically managed care and thinking about implementing these sorts of benefit programs that can help to sort of support and manage employees along the way, evolving more into UMG's overall benefit strategy in the next few years?
We've definitely seen success in other programs that we have launched. For one, we've been looking very closely at cancer claims and the impact of cancer on employees and families, and what can we do to better support how we wish to goodness that there was a magic pill, right, for all of that. But certainly there was more that we can do in terms of structural guidance so that people have a single source solution, at least to start with, on a journey that is already arduous, that is already overwhelming. What can we do to shrink the space, to expand the resource, to expand the guidance? And so I think that this is going to be a very worthwhile experiment that I'm really hopeful that our employees and their families and my CFO will see the benefits of.
Well, we do as well, and we believe that that absolutely will be true. So I know we've been talking about a lot about costs and clinical oversight, but maybe we can talk a little bit also about day-to-day experience for employees, and a little bit more about ROI for employers as well. And I love the term that you used, which is, it's not always just ROI, it's return for value. Financial return is really, really important. But you're also solving a problem and a need with this sort of benefit. And so you want to make sure you're really capturing, are you saving dollars, but are you also saving employees time and frustration and all of the things that, it's your job as a benefits leader to really care for that individual as a whole.
Right.
And so we take that approach as well. And we try to look at a bunch of different metrics across all of those different things. But some of the quick things to highlight here with our Maven managed benefit. So nearly 30% of members achieve pregnancy without IVF. So that means a lot of families, thousands, avoiding those costly and invasive treatments. For those who do pursue treatment, we actually see best-in-class outcomes in partnership with our fertility clinic network. We see a 66% IVF pregnancy rate with MMB, which is, compared to around a 55-54% national average. We see 96% of members saying that they value their employer more for having Maven as a benefit when it's offered. And we see almost 90%, 88% reporting being more productive at work during fertility treatment because of the support that they receive during the process. I know I had the benefit of having Maven myself through the tail end of my fertility journey. And I remember a nurse telling me, oh, make sure that you get the earliest appointment during your stimulation cycle. Get that 7 a.m. appointment. Make friends with the scheduling person. And it really made a difference for me. I didn't know that was an option, and I didn't have to miss work at all during that last stimulation cycle I was doing. So there's real sort of big things and little tactical things that can really help employees along the way with some of those day-to-day struggles. And when we talk about ROI, we talked about that $8,200 saved per birth across fertility and maternity claims. But it's also fewer days lost to stress, and it's more engaged employees and stronger loyalty to the company, as we were talking about. And so, when you retain just one high-performing employee during a family building journey, you're often saving a lot more than the program costs themselves in terms of your workforce and what it's made up of, and even the culture of your organization too.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, forward-thinking leaders like Chris are making this sort of shift. I find that all amazing benefits leaders have, a story that is their North Star for what they do and why they do it. So I know we've talked a little bit about your personal experience, Chris, but do you have a story like that for fertility benefits, not even necessarily for yourself, of an employee really getting care and support they need from UHG and having that positive experience and how it affected their work life?
Yeah. There are many stories like that. There were many Chris Smith stories who've worked in organizations or did not have access to a fertility benefit at all, not even having the fertility dollars. Lots of times in traditional medical plans, you will see that things like IVF are not covered, or at least not covered entirely, and there is a significant amount of out-of-pocket expenses, and cash sometimes is not evenly distributed, and so depending on what you have can determine whether or not you can afford to start your family, and that could be very disenchanting for folks. And again, my wife at that time, that was a struggle for us. But similarly, I do recall a couple who was faced with a similar journey. And before getting here, and I appreciated their openness and sharing with me that they had struggled with being able to start their family. That benefit was not available to them. Certainly that guidance and that guided support was not available to them. And making them aware of what was available through our medical plan, at least at that time, what was available. I believe giving their effusiveness showed that we have a vested interest in you as our employees, as our team members. We have a vested interest in making sure that you were present. We have a lot to gain from your contributions, and we understand that in order for you to contribute your best work, you need to be your best self. And what can we do to help that? They wanted to have a baby. And I can say that baby now is 3.5 years old. And I am told is doing very well. I get pictures at least once a year. And so now we exchange pictures. I'm the typical dad. I have a wallet, like an accordion, it drops down with all of my daughter's pictures, and we share our baby pictures. But these are the things that I think truly make a difference. These are the things that I think really, and I know it's such a benefits trope, that really drive those moments that matter, that really humanizes us all. We all want healthy families. We all want healthy and happy babies. And being able to tap into that humanity, I think serves us very well and lets us know and is that North Star for reminding us of those things that are truly important. So I do think of that couple often, even as I was going into the CFO's office and our CHRO's office with my proposal. Are we doing the right thing? And I think that answer is yes.
Oh, well, that's really special to hear, and thank you for sharing that story. I know a lot of folks on this call probably have or hope to have similar stories as well as they kind of go through that journey of.
I didn't mean to turn this into a Hallmark moment, by the way, but it's with this topic, it's very easy for me to get there.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
But I mean, that is why we all do what we do in various ways. And so I think Hallmark moment is a funny way of putting it, but it's real, and it's sort of, what we're doing at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And I do want to leave a little bit of time for folks who can go a couple minutes over for Q&A. I will encourage you all to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to input some of the questions here. I see one already here, so we'll address that in just a moment. But we are free to stay on 5 or 10 more minutes for folks who have questions, and for others who need to go, feel free to drop, of course. So I will turn to the chat here. There's a question about Maven Managed Benefit being relatively new and where some of our results are coming from. It's a great question. I guess it depends on what you consider to be new. We are newer in terms of, the Maven business itself has been around for over 10 years now. Let's see, maybe 11, I think it is this year, which is pretty wild. But our Maven Managed Benefit is our newest product, but it has been live since the beginning of 2024. So we have almost 2 full years of outcomes data, cost data, et cetera, under our belt at this point. And frankly, we've seen a really amazing response and uptake from the market. So we've gained some of the biggest employers in the country, some that are in the top 10 in terms of the biggest employers in the US, that are now our clients for this benefit. So it has been a little bit of a shorter time in terms of the full arc of Maven as a company, but we have some quite large ends, as we would say, in the analytics world at this point, because the uptake and the response has been so enthusiastic, and we continue to grow really, really rapidly with a huge bolus of new clients also starting with us 1/1 of the coming year. So that will get even bigger. All right. Other questions from folks? I see another one coming through here. Chris, I think this one's for you. Do you have any advice for HR leaders who want to bring these enhanced fertility benefits to their leadership for approval? Oh, Chris, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Of course I am. Sorry about that. I don't know if I really have advice, other than perhaps just reminding yourself of the things that you already know. I do believe that there is no better story or no better way to tell a story than with data. And I do encourage people to really lean in on your data, analyze, and go beyond the numbers, understand what the narrative is truly. And that in and of itself can be a very powerful tool when you are meeting with those who are controlling the dollars, right? Because the data really can't be disputed. It's factual. So that certainly was very helpful to me. The second thing, again, things that are likely already known, is I tasked myself with wanting to know, with every organization that I've been a part of, what is our philosophy? What is our stance? Who do we want to be when it comes to supporting our employees? It's a question I've asked in interviews. It's a question I've asked of leaders and even CEOs when I have the pleasure of getting time with them. And that becomes my guidepost, my North Star for this is the standard. Great. Here's what we need to do in my world of benefits to meet that standard. What are our competitors doing? What is our data telling us? What are our employees asking for? And I think when you come with those facts and those points, it does lend itself for making or having a more relevant, meaningful conversation to hopefully get the outcome and the program that you want to put in place.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Chris. And I will echo as well, you know, that part of that is our job as a potential partner for you all as well, where you know, you don't have to go it alone. And one of the things that we partner with folks who may end up becoming our clients is we do things like we'll work with you to actually do a really detailed projection of what you might spend on fertility treatment, depending on what sort of benefit you want to put in place based on your demographics for your employee base, where you're located, age, sex, all of those sorts of things. My team actually has worked with an actuarial firm to build a really powerful predictive model of fertility spend. So we can help just in terms of, this is really scary. I don't know how much we're going to spend. And if you have a benefit in place already, we can also analyze some of the high level data points from that data to see where having that clinically managed component come in on top of that could really help. We look at things like what's the ratio of IUI to IVF treatments that we're seeing in our book of business versus in your currently maybe health plan administered benefit. What's the percentage of folks who are going to get diagnostic testing that then go straight onto treatment? You know, how many, if you're offering an elective cryopreservation or egg freezing benefit, what's the average number of cycles that people are having? Those are sort of data-driven places where we can identify where there might be opportunity to better manage that benefit, both from the support and from the cost perspective. So we can help, or any vendor that you're looking at can also help with those things. So don't feel like you need to go it alone. All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Feel free to reach out to us or our administrators here if there are any other questions that we can help offer answers to offline. But thank you all so much for joining. And Chris, many, many thanks for taking the time today to share your experience with us. It was really powerful.
I've enjoyed it, Julie. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone.